Thank you everybody for coming here this evening. I want to especially thank Marty Cantor and Gary Ackerman for being here, former Congressman Gary Ackerman. And the purpose of tonight is to really talk about issues, okay? Because a lot of politics in America these days have devolved into just people attacking each other and yelling at each other. And the purpose of this meeting is not for me to present a position to persuade you of this or that. It's really to get some different viewpoints from different people to talk about some very serious, challenging issues that we face here in this country that are very real. Did you not hear me in the back? Did you hear me back there, Barry?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll use this. Is that better?
Yeah, better.
Okay. So the purpose is to talk about some very serious issues and ideas and talk about how to go about solving problems. So I'm going to give everybody a choice. It's now 7:30. We're starting pretty much on time at 7:36. Okay? Do we want to go till 8:36, 9 o'clock, or 9:30? Okay?
I leave when the second person joins.
Okay. 8:30, 9 o'clock, or 9:30? Who's in favor of 8:30? Raise your hand. Who's in favor of 9 o'clock? Raise your hand. Who's in favor of 9:30? Raise your hand. Okay, we're shooting for 9 o'clock. And of course, I'll stay if people want to discuss it more afterwards, but that's going to be our goal, is to try and finish by that time. So I'm going to talk a little bit to set things up. I've invited former Congressman Gary Ackerman here to present a viewpoint that would be a little bit more left of center, and Marty Cantor, who is an economist who works here on Long Island, a lot of think tank type of things, as well as a consultant in the CPA, to present a position that's a little bit more left, right of center. So we can get some differing viewpoints as to what's going on. So I have two things that I'm going to talk about just to set things up, okay? There was some great economic data the other day where real wages went up by 5.2% in 2015, which was very positive economic data that wages were actually increasing. When you compare the U.S. economy to much of the world, coming out of the recession, it's done much better than other places in the rest of the world facing the global recession that we faced. So that, looking at that from a and the report last week talked about the rising in wages, the reducing of poverty, and increased number of people that are covered by health insurance. So these are very positive developments. They're all very positive developments. On the opposite side, we've got the concern that the middle class is shrinking, that it's much harder to work your way up from the lower class to the middle class than it was. There's the concern about income inequality between the wealthiest and the poorest in America. And from my perspective, there's no simple answer to these questions. There are some candidates today that want to blame Latinos and Muslims for all of our problems. And there are some candidates that want to blame all millionaires for our problems. And I don't think anything is as simple as that. The world is so the topic for tonight is jobs, economy, and taxes. So a man asked me before about Israel. We'll talk about that, but not at this meeting. Okay, I'll talk to you afterwards, and we're going to have other town hall meetings about other topics. Tonight is really about jobs, taxes, and economy. That's the purpose of tonight. It's an issues-based forum focused on jobs, economy, and taxes. And so one of the things that I want to talk about two things. The first is related to what's happened in the country over the long period since like World War II. After World War II, we were the largest standardized mass producer in the world. We manufactured more than any place in the world after World War II in standardized mass production, which is usually low-tech, repetitive assembly and construction in factories of standardized mass-produced goods, which would be textiles and cars and simple electronics and all the things that were the products that made up our manufacturing base in America. We did it better than any place in the world because we had four things, all the ingredients you needed to be the best in the world. We had the natural resources from sea to shining sea. We had a workforce that was constantly replenished by immigration. So there was a lot of energy and vibrancy in our economy from people constantly coming into the economy. We had a banking system, unlike other places in the world, that was very reliable, so you could get the money, you could borrow the money. You had the rule of law to protect yourself as well. And we had the basic technology based upon an educated workforce in a public education system that was better than most places in the world. And after World War II, a lot of the places in Europe that would have been our competitors had been blown up during the war. And so we did great. in the 50s and the 60s, even into the 70s. And then the world changed because of transportation and because of communications and because of things that changed in other places in the world, as we saw the resurgence in Europe under the Marshall Plan in many places. We saw Japan build all new things there as well. And with transportation, you could ship the raw materials there. Banking, you could borrow the money from anybody. You could steal the technology or buy the technology from somebody else, and their wages were often lower. And then we saw it move from Japan and Germany to other places in the world that took over standardized mass production, and they went into Mexico and went into South Korea, and then we see it going into other places that are even more third world than that are doing the standardized mass production in the world today. And we are in a global economy now like never before. And you can make anything anywhere in the world, and people will go there because they can get the raw materials shipped there if they need to, and they can get the financing, as I said, they can steal or buy the technology, and they have the workforce often much cheaper than our workforce. So the big challenge for us in America is that we want to maintain our quality of life for our employees. We want our employees to have good wages. We want them to have health insurance. We want them to have pensions. We want them to have a good quality of life. And we want to have environmental protections to make sure that people don't pollute our environment. And we want to have worker safety rules. And we want to have the things that make the quality of life in America superior to other places in the world. Better for our people, better for the world overall. But we're competing with people that don't necessarily have those type of protections. They may have lower wages, they may have child safety, they may have no worker safety, they may have no environmental protections, they may have no regulations at all, and we don't want to have what they call a race to the bottom to be more like them. We want to see the rest of the world uplifted to our standard of living. So we have to think about in a global economy where you can do anything, anywhere, and we're competing against everyone, how to address these things without ruining our quality of life. And quite frankly, we don't want to see other people pollute their world as well, or have their workers abused in other parts of the world as well. So how do we encourage that to happen? And at the same time, make us have better wages for our employees in the process. So that's a big challenge in the global economy. In addition, technology changes on a dime now. I've spoken at other meetings before about how 10 years ago, Kodak was one of the largest companies in the world, and with tens of thousands of employees. Today, they're practically out of business. They have a couple hundred employees, and nobody uses Kodak anymore because everybody's got an iPhone. They never moved along with that disruptive technology. Airbnb is the largest hotel company in the world now, except unlike Hilton or Sheraton or Marriott, they don't have 50,000 or 100,000 employees. They have 1,600 employees. So the world changes overnight with the global economy and with technology. And to address the need for our employees to have wages, we have to think of things that are not easy to think of. They require us to talk about it and think about it, and they can't be answered with simple sound bites that sometimes we're subjected to. So what I'm trying to do, this is my 17th town hall meeting. I had 16 town hall meetings during the primary. I'm having 6 town hall meetings now about issues, specifically issues at a time. Because I want this campaign to be positive and about issues and solutions. So that's the one thing I want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about is I was very impacted by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who talked about in the 80s, really, he started in the 80s, but he's continued after that, about the federal tax policy. And, I'm certainly in favor of a progressive federal income tax policy, but Senator Moynihan talked about how when the tax policies in America were first set up, under the New Deal and later on under the Great Society, the idea is that the strong, powerful states like New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Connecticut and other places in what are now the Rust Belt needed to support the rest of the country to catch up with us, because we had to help our brothers and sisters throughout the rest of the country to have a better quality of life with areas of education and healthcare and the environment and things like that. But now, fast forward to today, and New York State and the other blue states, the Democratic states, are typically net donors to the federal government. We give a lot more to the federal government than we get back. And the red states, with the exception of Texas, are net takers from the federal government. So we're, in effect, subsidizing North Carolina and South Carolina and Arizona. And all of our friends, when they tell us they're moving somewhere, where are they going to? They're going to North Carolina, South Carolina, Arizona, Florida. So we're subsidizing these other places and they're actually beating us because all of our friends are moving there and saying, boy, it's so cheap to live here, it's so great, you know, the taxes are so low. And we have to be looking at how do we keep the money from our state, in our state, to actually fix the problems that we have in our state. Because we've got poverty issues, we've got crumbling infrastructure, we have crumbling schools and sewers. And, you know, if say everybody's given the same money, which they're not, but everybody's given the same money. In some of these states, the taker states, they're building new roads and new sewers and new bridges and new schools and new hospitals, and they're expanding, their tax base is expanding and they're growing, and people are moving in and they're saying how great it is to live there, and we get the same money, we're fixing our old roads and our old bridges and our old sewers and our old hospitals and our old schools, and we're hanging on for dear life, and our people are being crushed under their property tax burden out here on Long Island, for example. It's not the same everywhere, but Long Island and Westchester are facing these type of problems. So I'm just putting these two ideas out there related to the global economy and how things have changed. It's not the same as it always was. We're not going to be able to go back to standardized mass production of simple things. And we have to figure out how to get a competitive advantage in America that will provide wages for our employees, which requires, number one, I believe, an educated workforce. That's the most important thing we need to do to have a competitive advantage with the rest of the world. And we need to have a competitive economic system that makes it attractive to do business here. We don't want to get rid of our environmental protections. We don't want to get rid of our worker safety. We don't want to pay less wages to our people. We don't want people to not have health insurance or have pensions or be able to retire one day in security. We want to keep all that stuff. So how do we have a competitive advantage while keeping those things that we believe in and looking at our trade policy as well? So this is a very broad thing. We're not going to get through it all tonight, but the idea is let's talk about these very complex, difficult issues with smart people who are going to give us some ideas as to things to think about. So the first speaker is going to be Dr. Marty Cantor. He said if I called him doctor, he'd be very happy. And he's a certified public accountant, and he's very well respected for his views on economic positions. And then Congressman Gary Ackerman, who I'm sure most of everyone in this room knows. Let's give Gary Ackerman a round of applause for a great life in public service. And let's hear the different ideas that they have, and then we're going to open it up to questions to people, and we're going to talk about some different things. We're not going to solve everything tonight. You know, part of tonight is also about educating me about ideas that these gentlemen have, but also ideas that the people in this room have, and to come up with things to try and solve these problems. Now, as a freshman, if I'm fortunate enough to become a United States congressman, as a freshman congressman, I'm not going to be able to go in and say, hey, this is how you solve the problem. But maybe I'll have something to contribute to help the dialogue along. A big challenge for me is that I want to try and move beyond the same old finger-pointing, yelling at each other type of politics that we have in this country, and get people of goodwill from different perspectives to actually talk to each other to figure out how to solve the problems that we face. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Marty Cantor. Thank you.
I'll speak from here because Gary said he's not standing up. So. Thank you, Tom, for having this, and I'm delighted to be with Gary. God, we worked together when I was commissioner years ago, and you were our congressman. It was super. It's really interesting some of the comments that Tom had mentioned in terms of our economy and Long Island. We send Daniel Patrick Moynihan's report. He created a fisc report that showed the imbalance of monies to the states, and I was pleased to advance that report for Congressman Steve Israel to see exactly how much we're losing. Of the 50 states in the United States, New York is the 49th in terms of money it sends to Washington and doesn't get back. And we can all guess who the 50th state is, and that's California. And we send over $20 billion of our tax dollars to Washington in numbers greater than the aid we get back. We have the same imbalances between Long Island and Albany. That's about $5 billion more in taxes that we send to Albany than we get back in aid. That's why every year you see the big fight over school aid and things of that nature. So Long Island is really the cash cow for the state, and New York is the cash cow for the United States. And that has been going on for a long, long time. And Tom, when you get to Washington, you can't do any worse than what's already been done there, excluding the congressman. In terms of what we have, I'm concerned about in this campaign cycle, small business. Small business is the backbone of our economy, the backbone of the country's economy. 80,000 on Long Island, or 87,000 small businesses, and that's defined as having 20 or fewer employees. We all have friends and neighbors who run small businesses, and they are getting the brunt, and that is part of what the discussion, one of the big tax discussions in terms of this presidential campaign, lowering the tax rate to 15% for corporations, and it has been shown that when you reduce corporate taxes, corporations and the economy does better, because remember something, corporations don't pay the tax, we do. Everybody here pays corporate tax in the products that we buy. And most of our businesses are what they call subchapter S, small business, and the question is, will they be paying the lower rate or the higher personal income tax rate? And the latest that I have heard is that they're going to be paying the higher rate rather than the lower corporate rate, because they get taxed as an individual. So we're not seeing any of the reduction of individual rates. And Tom had mentioned the middle class. The middle class is almost decimated because of taxes. In terms of, you mentioned that number about 5.2% of median household income. What that means is median household income doesn't mean one wage earner like it used to. It doesn't even mean two wage earners. It could be 3 wage earners in a household. So part of that 5.2% is generated by the more than one job in that household. And when you consider that the jobs that we are creating in the United States and on Long Island are more prevalent in the service sector, the lower paying jobs, the higher paying jobs like manufacturing, and science and technology, we're not creating them in the high as fast as we are in the lower paying jobs. And a lot of that has to do with the Affordable Care Act and how businesses react to providing that. Remember, businesses are not static. They react to tax policy, and they react to social policy. And we're seeing that. That's why we're seeing more lower paying part-time jobs, less than full-time jobs, 20 hours a week jobs. And that's why we have more than, we have a greater amount of household income, a greater increase. The reality is, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Nassau County had a 2.2% increase in wages. And Suffolk County had 1.5% increase in wages. And of the 334 rather largest counties, Nassau County rates 150 and Suffolk is 224. So we're not doing well. Now you all think about it, you all run household budgets. Just a 2.2% increase in your wages. I guarantee with that, I can play the great Karnak and tell you, I guarantee that in every one of your households over the past 15 years, your costs have gone up way more than 2.2%. Your energy costs, your property taxes, your education costs, everything is going up in significant numbers. So really, we are still lagging behind. And when you consider adjusted for inflation, the wages that we earn on Long Island have not increased since the year 2000. That's a real staggering number, adjusted for inflation. So we're not even keeping up with inflation. And that's the discussion that you hear with the Federal Reserve, that they're saying that we haven't hit our 2% inflation to increase interest rates. But remember, what's in that 2% inflation? It's lower gas prices, lower energy costs because of that gas. Once that kicks in, inflation goes up, and then you get an increase in interest rates. So that's why the markets are all fluctuating, because of that fear that inflation is really an arbitrary number. In terms of manufacturing, which is really which is a real interest to me on Long Island, is that a survey that I conducted for the Long Island Forum for Technology of the companies we surveyed, and we had a really good response rate, a random sample rate. 50% said that manufacturing will continue to contract on Long Island over the next 5 years, and it has. And 30% said they're going to relocate to the very states that Tom mentioned, the red states, because low taxes, low energy costs, low wages. So we have really become uncompetitive with our other states in the country, and that's what makes the Moynihan report, the Fisk report, the fact that we are sending so much out. We are subsidizing the rest of the country, and that's why we have struggles back here at home. And that's something that the new congressman, hopefully Tom, will bring to that argument. You know, Long Island, we all know it. What the manufacturers said: high energy costs, high taxes, onerous state and federal regulation. We have, in the last 8 years, we have small business, and I can tell you this because I see my clients. I am filling out more and more paperwork for the federal government than I've ever done before. And running a business, I can't pass those costs over to my clients. So I'm eating the cost of filling out all this voluminous paperwork that really is really unnecessary. So we have, so we're looking at, we're looking at in terms of really the foundation. Manufacturing used to be on Long Island 15% of our wage of our employees. Now we're only 5%. We have become a service sector economy, and the only way to make money in a region is if you make stuff, you put it in a box, and you ship it someplace else and import other people's money. We haven't done that in a long time in significance. The other thing that's really important is that gross domestic product. All right, that's something that we have something on Long Island called the gross regional product. That's the total of goods and services that we generate, we create. In the United States, just to give you an idea, the gross domestic product has increased an average of 2%. 2%. It used to be 3%. When it hits 3.5%, 4%, that's when the interest rates increases get kicked in by the Federal Reserve. So it's interesting that they haven't done that, but that 2% growth. Just to give you an idea of where we are in an overall perspective, from 1948 to 2006.